Well, let's get this party started. Had a few videos I was going to cover in my good faith criticism, but I felt not going with that crutch would been a better method to actually take in regards to that. So, just for clarity's sake, and because I'm too lazy to actually edit together a proper video, I'm going to be covering it here so anyone can watch it. And if I think it's up to muster, I'll edit it down to a video later on. So, we're going to be going over Turf Nation's The Critical Drinker, a dishonest film critic. Is it true? Is it even close to true? I don't know. Even though I have a comment on this video, let me give a real time rundown of this.
Not just in terms of subscriber count, but also in terms of average views. I mean, this man gets an average of at least 1 million views on each video and often a lot more, and his second channel also does very well, and it's not difficult to understand why. The Critical Drinker has a great gimmick that a lot of people enjoy. He has taken the persona of the drunken Scotsman who doesn't take these reviews too seriously, but still manages to put into eloquent words exactly what a lot of people were thinking. Naturally, not everyone will find this gimmick funny or
Okay, so he acknowledged that his gimmick, which he does, has it going. It's a great gimmick, and I will agree. But he sort of showed his hand what everyone thinks, or at least what a lot of people think.
entertaining, but many people do, and that's perfectly fine. I think there are a lot of things to enjoy about the content of his videos. I mean, for a person who hangs out frequently with people like Geeks and Gamers and Eric July, who don't really seem to know much about film as an art form, the Critical Drinker does actually have some unique opinions, and at least has a fundamental understanding of story, which is nice. Now, are his reviews the most in-depth?
Was that passive aggressive or just who knows? Flip it subtitling if he called it, subliminals, brainwashing. Who knows? Who cares?
Depth and groundbreaking? No, of course not. They can be quite shallow at times, but I don't think that's a problem necessarily. He talks about media and a lot of people seem to enjoy it, and on YouTube, what else can you really expect? So while I believe that the Critical Drinker is a decent film critic who generally does have some good analysis sometimes, he also often falls into bad habits, and I don't think it'll come as much of a surprise, if you watch my content, that I have a lot to criticize about the Critical Drinker, and you may think that I harp on him too much. And to be honest, it's really a sign of his own success, because the issues I see with his content become a lot more prevalent given his size and his influence.
No, just more people are going to target you more when you're at the top, especially given the sort of content that you tend to focus on. Give Turf Nick I'm going to give Turf Nation some props here because he actually covers these videos, unlike his co-patriots on the Phantom Initiative, that is, at least.
And that's why I think it's important to criticize him when I think he does something wrong. Now, when I think about the issues that I have with the Critical Drinker, it seems to boil down to two pretty significant things: dishonesty in how he frames things when speaking about media, and his relentless focus on the message.
It's time for you to get.
And this is a good time because I don't want to pay for Red to put some commentary real quick or just the message or dishonesty or the message. Let's
Are
see
very
how he
closely
proves
intertwined, and
it.
it's hard to fully separate them. However, I think it warrants two
Okay, dishonesty and the message, it's hard to separate them.
ideas. Now, these two issues are very closely intertwined, and it's hard to fully separate them. However,
Maybe in your mind, but maybe the message to you is dishonest and you're just putting all this sort of spin on it for the sake of brevity here.
I think it warrants two parts to this critique of the Critical Drinker, so that I can give the time and focus they each deserve. And honestly, my script was way too all over the place before I split it up. It was a mess. However, this video will generally be about the dishonesty of the Critical Drinker, where I'll use examples from his videos to show how mischievous and sometimes insidious his framing of things can be. And then in an upcoming video, we'll take things
Gotta love that language. Insidious, mischievous. I wish he would just form his own opinion, as we're about to see.
a bit further. As always, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and if you don't like it or disagree, then tell me why down in the comments. However,
Manual
before I get into
plug
my
here.
own analysis of The Drinker, I just want to mention this video made by Pillar of Garbage, titled The Critical Drinker Lied to You About Glass Onion. And this video goes in depth with how shallow, misguided, and dishonest Drinker's reviews can actually be. And what I particularly love about this video is that it doesn't really criticize Drinker much for the overall toxicity his channel breeds, or the political aspects that I often talk about. Rather, he just goes in depth with Drinker's review of Glass Onion and
We're about to see, but go into depth? That's a good question there.
breaks down all the argumentation to show that at best, The Drinker is an incredibly shallow and novice film reviewer who fails to understand and accurately interpret the media he consumes.
So despite everything TurfNation prefaced this video with, he thought it was extremely, even despite that little flash of that thing on the screen, who really cares? Let's go on.
But at worst, this video shows The Drinker is inherently dishonest in his reviews, which can be seen in the way he purposefully misconstrues the scene where Daniel Craig and Janelle Monáe's characters are spying on Dave Bautista.
The example Drinky gives for Ryan Johnson's blatant rewriting is the scene where Blanc, and as we later see Helen, spot Duke's voyeurism.
Batista's watching his girlfriend supposedly having an affair with Miles, only to be observed by Blanc. Now look at the later version of this exact same scene. Notice how Helen's been added in here when she totally should have been visible before.
Except no, that isn't true. There's a reason The Drinker plays these clips on mute. Let me
Oh, complete bullshit. Instead of actually addressing what Critical Drinker just said there, he freaking said, there's a reason he plays his videos on mute. Critical Drinker generally plays clips of movies on mute. He generally, for conciseness or just short brevity's sake, the soul of wit, he does a lot of speaking and doesn't use the audio. So this is not something that is special case where Critical Drinker, is trying to mislead people with this. This is standard operation. Okay, maybe I'm making that seem too big. This is standardly what Critical Drinker does with his videos. He very rarely just plays a clip. And what did he say that was exactly wrong at this point? No, you got to cut him off beforehand and make it like he's purposely being dishonest.
put the sound back on for you. That was the first time we see this. There's a close shot of Duke, then we hear the twig snap, and then we pull back to a shot revealing Blanc. Here's the scene as we're shown it later on. We start with this slightly wider shot, revealing Blanc and Helen. Then Helen leaves, causing that sound, and Duke turns round. This point is the moment we saw earlier on, and there's a very obvious, very obtrusive sound cue, the sole purpose of which is to communicate precisely this.
Drinker, in bad faith, purposefully misrepresents the scene in an attempt to make Ryan Johnson look like an incompetent writer and director, which in
How does he Okay, please, for Christ's sakes, tell me, how does he misrepresent the scene? I really hate this sort of freaking rhetoric on YouTube videos. What does Critical Drinker mean with what he's saying here?
in general is something he attempts to do throughout the entire video and fails spectacularly.
You're using this one little example. I'll tell TurfNation the same thing I told to Heels vs. Babyface and Az. Does this really tell what you think? And how would someone of a different perspective view this particular thing? As was way off base with his little second example after the pronoun in the beginning. And I can't even think of how much gish galloping TurfNation is putting this by layering Pillar of Garbage over top of his own commentary here. They do not establish, neither one establishes what Critical Drinker is trying to misrepresent this scene.
Because no matter your opinions on Ryan Johnson and whether or not you dislike The Glass Onion, watching Pillar of Garbage pick apart basically every argument shows just how little effort was put into this video by...
Absolutely not, because he does not make a good argument of why Critical Drinker misrepresents the scene here. You can't just use someone's premise without having good evidence to back it up.
By the drinker. There's a section where he's nitpicking all the little pieces of plot inconsistency he can find, but none of them actually make any sense. And they would easily have been disproven if he had actually paid attention while watching the movie.
Another point of contention. I think it's a sign of bad faith if you were paying attention. No, maybe someone has a different perspective than you two do. And please enlighten the audience of this different perspective instead of using a dodge and trying to say he misrepresented. How did he misrepresent it? Because he didn't play the sound, which he normally doesn't for a lot of these scenes. How's that different than any other point? Or is he just dishonest overall? And you got to play these mental gymnastics to make your argument here and there.
And thought for just a second about what he was writing. And here was just a small section of that longer segment.
What if Miles had refused to let Helen and Blanc onto his island? Wouldn't Helen's presence here with the world's most famous detective be a very obvious red flag?
Again, if he does in front of the rest, everyone, Blanc included, will definitely know something is rotten in the state of Braun. He literally takes the first possible opportunity to interrogate Blanc because this is a red flag, but he doesn't figure out what's happening because he's not very clever.
Why didn't news of the death of a high-profile tech prodigy reach the press sooner?
Yet again, this is addressed.
This is addressed. Yes, it is addressed. Okay. But the time frame it's addressed in does not necessarily make sense. Did she find the sister, identify it, go back, get the freaking get the box, smash it open, come back, figure out, Google the world's greatest detective, and in the time frame that someone would have actually reported on it, it's completely believable. This nitpick here is definitely believable that it's unbelievable to a certain audience member like the critical drinker. Stop thinking critical drinker has to give these movies good faith. He goes with a more instinctual, does this feel right? Or does it feel weird? And it's not necessarily shallow, but it definitely comes from a biased place, just like both of your perspectives on the critical drinker here.
If I pulled a few strings, I could keep it from leaking to the press for another week, maybe.
You can disbelieve a detective would have the pull to do this, but within the logic of...
Yes, he can disbelieve it. Okay? And he does. So why are you going on to rationalize with your logic further? Let's see.
this world, this is explained. The verisimilitude is not compromised. Why are the others so far away?
Why did it take everyone so long to reach the scene of her apparent death when they were only a matter of yards away?
We are not shown them to be mere meters away. That isn't true. We're shown them running in all directions during the blackout chaos.
Why did Blanc have a convenient bottle of chili sauce in his pocket to use as fake blood?
Well, I will agree with the second point there, pillar of garbage. But asking questions is not being dishonest. He's just asking these questions he probably asked himself when watching the movie as a critic, instead of just excusing it with such things as you'll find he's just stupid. The villain, the great villain who fucking gets into this position is just stupid. If he's stupid, why is he worth being a villain? Because it's a Rian Johnson movie and he likes to do the complete opposite of what's logical. It seems like most of the time from what I've seen.
There's a scene that sets this up. God damn, man. Why did a guy not notice getting pickpocketed? People typically don't notice getting pickpocketed. This is not some cinematic contrivance. Honestly, one day Drinker's going to learn that this exists.
Why bother? Why? Why? You're asking questions to his questions. I'm sure there's a term for this. I don't know if it may be begging the question. I don't know, but I don't really care. Critical Drink is asking questions and you're like, you're stupid for asking questions. No, if you want to get into it, talk about what these questions would actually instill in the actual audience members, not that he's stupid for asking these questions that at least some audience members would be asking themselves.
In the real world, that you can have something nicked from your pocket without realizing it, and it's going to blow his goddamn mind.
I'd highly recommend checking out this video after you're done here because it's made by someone who actually knows shit about film. It's a brilliant video that responds.
I beg to differ. He's not showing any display of knowing anything about film in this video or most of his videos that I've seen, but I must admit, it's been rather limited. Yep. There's a thing people do with stories to make their own headcanon. Yeah, it's fine if people want to do that personally, but to say someone else has to share their headcanon is just stupid or arrogant. Definitely not trying to understand other people or other people's perspective, in my opinion.
Responds to the direct criticisms of the film that Drinker lays out and shows just how little understanding and thought goes into his videos.
Then we get to, I think, my favorite point of the video.
If any single one of these forced plot elements didn't happen exactly as they play out, then the whole story would have collapsed around it.
The story would have fallen apart if the story beats didn't happen. I mean, yeah, that is true.
In general, this is just a really well
Oh, that is hilarious. Oh, yeah. Well, that is true. Being sarcastic is not a point and not worth raising, TurfNation. My man, my boy, you really need to learn to pick the people you cite a little bit better.
made video that debunks the Drinker's film criticism in a way that I could only ever dream of doing, showing how
Oh, if that's something you can only just excuse everything the critical drinker points out because the villain's stupid, people are stupid. Yeah. And most people probably watching Pillar of Garbage video on critical drinker. Yeah. Stupid. Okay, that's my only reasoning for why he gets the views and why you get the views you do. Hey, same reasoning you guys go with. The people just watching are stupid.
he lies and misrepresents the movie in question just to sound smart and intelligent.
Point out one lie. You construed, you sort of invented this one thing in your head that the critical drinker lied because he did not have the same sort of perspective on that particular double up scene. Yeah, sure. Call it a lie if you want. I call it a difference in perspective and what he expects from a movie. Comparison to you, who, what do you want from a movie? I don't even know. Anything goes for you, I guess.
And to dunk on this movie made by a director who his fan base loves to hate, when in reality his review is more flawed than his own misconstrued version.
Okay. Rian Johnson has never been a good writer, a good, logical, consistent writer. This annoys the hell out of a lot of people. Looper, for all the good things about Looper, it hurt the brain to think about the logic. This movie, I finished watching this like a half hour before I came in to do this. It hurt my head. So many things. Will I say it is as bad as Critical Drinker? Probably not, but will I have the same criticisms? No. I have different criticisms for the movie. I still don't think it's very good, especially from a story perspective. But Rian Johnson is a good director. He does know his shit in filmmaking. Just writing is not something I can say I like his writing style.
Of this film. It's really insane considering that he's one of the largest review channels on YouTube, and he's generally considered a person who understands film, when all he's done in this video is to lie about the film to make himself sound smart.
Lie. Is there something he actually lied about, or did he just leave out some context you and Pillar of Garbage thought was really important for coming together, yet you don't explain it, except for saying the villain's dumb. People are dumb. They don't notice themselves being pickpocketed. And even most of the clips that you shown, Pillar of Garbage is like, oh yeah, I understand why you see it this way, but
And this moment from Pillar's video just highlights the incredible hypocrisy of this man.
You know, it genuinely undermines my faith in humanity that a lot of people out there consider this film a smart, well-made movie. Rian Johnson seems to have some kind of reality distortion field around him and his work, somehow convincing people that he's this crazy auteur genius. The truth is that it's nothing but the flashy veneer of intelligence with nothing lying beneath.
During his video, after showing an instance of Drinker misrepresenting a scene on purpose, Pillar
Oh, buzzword, misrepresenting, lie, misrepresent. Oh, God. Yeah, this TurfNation guy, yeah, at least pillar of garbage, which I'm going to be covering his video next, hopefully, if it doesn't break my brain here. Probably is beyond TurfNation because he has nothing to say except for lie, misrepresent, blah, blah, blah.
asks a great question. Why would a channel with 1.5 million subscribers lie? And while the answer to this question is nuanced, it really does boil down to grifting. The critical drinker knows his audience. He knows that they aren't watching him for his honest reviews.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, his films does look great. They're, I don't even want to call them bad. It's just anti-writing. He doesn't care about the writing. He cares about what he can do. The ending of this movie is just god-awful. I'm like, what the fuck? Why did all these people all of a sudden start they were going to lie for this guy? Now all of a sudden, after the strong female black woman went on a rampage, everyone got behind her. What caused this flip? Did she tap into their animosity and their pure rage so they're willing to fuck over their own lives just to fuck him over because this one woman just went on a little spree? Yeah, it's somewhat believable, but oh God, it's still not.
About media. They watch him because he says the things they want to hear. Lying to make Rian Johnson seem like an incompetent writer and director serves the viewers who already despise.
And TurfNation's just basically making some wild theories. Your Snoke theories suck. Your critical drinker theories suck here. You're not establishing any of this. You're saying because he's popular, he must really play up to his audience. And yeah, you will find that to a certain degree. But overall, you're not proving fucking a single thing here. Okay? You can repeat everything. Lied. He's lying, misrepresenting. It does not prove anything. You have not proved anything here.
Rian Johnson in the first place.
Will you
There are
prove
plenty of
anything
other
at all?
examples that we'll delve into later in this video. Just really quick before we continue, do check out the Fandom Initiative if you want more content covering channel.
No, you don't. Phantom Initiative is a black hole of critical thinking. Okay? I even have my problems with the critical drinkers reviews. I understand under the context that it is, how it's designed, and that it's not super deep, and he's playing a character, he's being hyperbolic and hyping things up. Under those contexts, it is perfectly legitimately good videos that aren't meant to be done in bad faith. Might be some elements that you can extract from it that will come off as bad faith, but still, it's not his intention. Unfortunately, entertainment, big people prioritize brief videos that are both entertaining and somewhat informative. And Critical Drinker is probably one of the best at creating that balance. Will he get it perfect all the time? No, but that's besides the point. Calling him a liar is just not considering this as a medium to be respected in its own when it's established. He's playing a character. He's a writer. And from what I hear, he did a bit of acting. So what do you, TurfNation, or Pillar of Garbage? Oh, that's such a horrible name. Why just go with that? Oh, freaking out.
Need something that they won't get from a Chris Stuckman video. For example, in his recent video on Across the Spider-Verse, he's pretty positive about the movie, which makes sense. It's a fantastic movie. And I think most of this video is perfectly fine as he's talking about the
So it's when he's talking positively about movies, you have no issue with him, but he's talking negatively about the movie and you have a problem. Can you really, is that how little you think about media? Believe it or not, YouTube videos are media. You pay attention to the language, and you think you're paying attention to the language, but no, you are just cherry picking these little small things that you think you can twist into making him look dishonest. And overall, I think that is a rather bad way to critique things. I mean, I don't want to be unfair to either Pillar of Garbage or TurfNation here. As I said, out of the Phantom Initiative people, he's probably one of the most decent one by showing as much as he does, just because they almost don't show anything and just go off on even wilder conspiracy theories. Like, let me just say, the debate between Nerdette and Bob of Organized Chaos. Bob's like, don't you think Mahler would be at January 6th? And I'm like, Mahler is Welsh. He's in the UK. Oh, God, hurt.
Things that worked well for him and the things that didn't. There's the occasional referring to feminism because, I mean, it's a Critical Drinker video. This man can't not mention feminism. A true ally. And he thinks that it's ridiculous that Spider-Woman can fight while pregnant, which, sure, that's what's ridiculous about this movie. But then, like basically any review he does,
And you think feminism is not a selling point in all of these movies with the way things are going. Was there no hint of feminism in this movie? Seriously, was there not? Can you honestly say there was nothing that could be seen as being feministic in this movie? No, you just moved past that point.
he needs to satisfy the people who are watching him for his takes on the message.
And obviously, you go with your little theory here. Maybe he believes in the message. Maybe he's not saying it's for his audience. Maybe he actually believes it. Think about that. And you just assuming? I would say that makes you a little bit more dishonest. I can't actually say the Critical Drinker isn't grifting, but I like to give people a benefit of the doubt. And you know what? You're in your bias bubble. Critical Drinker is in a less biased bubble, but still a biased bubble. But
modern Hollywood and wokeness. Despite his reluctance to say that word, he just needs to point out the marginalized white man in the story not being a stoic hero.
Also, I can't shake the feeling that the script is doing everything in its power to play down Peter Parker, like it's afraid the audience will somehow start rooting for him over Miles if he's shown to be too capable and confident.
And don't those scenes sort of display what Critical Drinker's talking about? Do you have contrary scenes of Peter Parker in this movie being heroic to counter him? See, that's how you would prove that the Critical Drinker's being dishonest or misleading even.
And the first movie portrayed him as an aging, burned-out loser who only redeems himself at the end, while the second film morphs him into a bumbling, hapless father in a pink bathrobe who for some reason keeps taking his baby along on life-threatening adventures, despite having a perfectly capable mother at home to look after it. Is this some weird attempt to mock and belittle the Spider-Man that most people know and love, who incidentally just happens...
Established. This is a question he's laying out there for his audience, okay? Not making any definitive statements.
to be the only straight white man in the entire movie? I don't know, man. It just kind of leaves a sour taste in my mouth, that's all.
Now, some people may see this as him being brave and speaking the truth that everyone is too afraid to say. However, this is arguably the safest thing he could say given his audience. And it's also just a hilariously dumb analysis of the movie and Peter's character. First of all, Peter Parker is not the main focus of this story. He was a more prominent figure in the last movie, but this one is more about Miles, Gwen, and Miguel. But seriously,
Again, you're not actually addressing his actual point, okay? He's making a particular point and you're just completely brushing past it and being like, oh no, he's not the focus, so who cares? Some people care. You should not dismiss other people's feeling, Mr. Well, I can't say TurfNation's a leftist. I think he's a leftist. Maybe more of a leftoid. What I call a leftist, who people who are too dumb to actually come off as intelligent people on the left. Basically, LARPing left people who LARP as leftists because they don't have the intelligence to actually be, in my opinion, worthy of the title of leftist. Not that even leftists, for the most part, are that intelligent. Some of them are, but I'm not going to make that assessment. Definitely falling on the leftoid category there. Not saying there aren't rightoids, like as Heel's first babyface there.
If you're complaining about Peter Parker as a character not having positive representation in this movie, then good for you. Basically, every other major Spider-Man movie, TV show, or video game will have you covered.
Okay, so just because other things do it, we're perfectly fine with not doing it here. That is not a rebuttal or a counter to it. That is just a dodge straight out of hell.
We are not lacking in Peter Parker focused stories, so if you really want to see your white straight man so much, then go watch any of the other Spider-Man movies. This is just so incredibly whiny and pathetic. And that
And you're getting meta with your sort of commentary here and just insulting him here. He's asking a question about Peter Parker. Is he making any statement about that? Maybe he would like to see Peter Parker, the original Spider Man, get a sort of moment like he did in the first movie. I don't know, but just dismissing him and totally dodging, totally whataboutism here and bringing up other media that isn't outside this movie. Is the critical drinker talking about Spider-Man series as a whole? Maybe he brings it up. I'm not going to cover that. I'm covering this video.
doesn't even take into account how he's either misrepresenting Peter's arc in these movies, or he just doesn't understand it because he's blinded by how awfully they're treating the white man. But seriously, explain to me how it is a bad thing for Peter Parker to have overcome the rut and depression that he was in during the first movie, where yes, he was
Yeah, I don't even know if Critical Drinker said white. He's talking about Peter Parker as a character. And Turf Nation here is like, white men, white men, white men. You'll get it every other place. Why can't this be a place for minorities? That's fine. He never says anything about the minorities that he shows. His focus is on just how they sort of degraded Peter Parker as a character, at least in his opinion as a critic. And are you trying to dismiss someone's opinion? So intolerant.
down in the dumps. That shit happens to people, even our heroes. But then by being a mentor to Miles, he begins to get back some of that old spark and he turns his life around. He now has a wife, the love of his life. He has a daughter who he freaking loves spending time with, and he seems fucking happy. How is this a negative portrayal of Peter Parker? Just because he has a pink bathrobe on? Are you that insecure that colors frighten you?
And did he say anything about a negative? He's saying he doesn't get any heroic time. There's a mother who could have been taking care of this child while Peter's doing dangerous stuff. So, hint, Peter's being wildly responsible if he does anything like this unless he's forced into the situation. But that's besides the point.
Or is it because he's a silly and goofy person? Because guess what? That's who Peter Parker is. It's so funny because
Oh, now he's telling Critical Drinker. Turf Nation is obviously the expert on Peter Parker. Please tell us who Peter Parker is. I hate this fucking shit. Don't tell me who Peter Parker is. Okay? It's up to who's making the movie to tell the audience. If they don't clearly deliver it in a certain way, that's the fault of them. Don't blame Critical Drinker, even though you actually said you liked how Critical Drinker this. You focus on this one little point and go on and on. And how does this come into your theorem of dishonesty? I just don't see it.
Drinker took one look at Peter being a loving father and thought, fuck this, the message has gone too far. It truly is a pathetically unsophisticated argument in an otherwise pretty solid review.
And seriously, this is a extremely pathetic attempt to focus on something you're concerned about. You're saying it's a overall good review. You don't like the fact that he's asking questions. Why is Peter being treated this way? Why is he endangering his daughter by going in this? Why doesn't someone else watch the daughter? Why is the pregnant Spider Woman out there? I don't fucking know. Okay, neither do you. People can ask these questions and they can have these criticisms. Just because you don't agree with the criticisms and your subjective opinion does not mean jack shit.
That's what burns even more because he genuinely has the ability to be a talented film critic, but he shoots himself in the foot by not wanting his target audience to be other film lovers, but rather he's targeting mostly white men, and especially the
And why are you making this assumption? Does he have no black fans, no women fans? Can you prove this? Do you have the demographics? Even so, YouTube is a primarily male platform. For you to just make all these wild speculations, that's all you got. You just see this one little point, the message, and you completely lose focus and assume that he is targeting a certain demographic. You know what? I think he doesn't care about color because, unlike you, he cares about diversity, not diversity of skin or gender, of mind. Okay. And he doesn't like what people have been putting in Hollywood and trying to come up with a decision. He's used the term the message. Why? Probably a little bit inaccurate. It still is a quick, concise way and generally good enough that he covers it well enough, in my personal subjective opinion. And I'm a little bit less biased than you, Turf Nation, but that's probably not hard to do.
White men who already hate modern Hollywood. It's just disappointing. However, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. I'll save most of this discussion for the next video where we'll go in depth with the message and is catering towards men.
Yeah, I'm it's not out yet. I'm thinking it's going to be almost a month ago. You should really, or is it this one? Okay. 2 weeks. Maybe not. I don't think it's worth it. Everything
rich
I
and
saw
hot
from
fam.
him doesn't seem to be
Raising the Champions League.
worth very much, in my subjective opinion, which is a lot less biased because I sort of want evidence instead of just manufactured flim flab that he's just going for white men with his targeting of people. It's not white men who hate the message. Plenty of people dislike it. Okay. Oh, they're just traitors. Yeah, I don't care about your opinion in that case.
if you will. Was it sold to audiences under false pretenses? And if so, is there a danger here?
Now, this is Pillar of Garbage, how the critical drinker misrepresents Barbie and why that matters. In fact, I will agree. No, I won't agree he misrepresents Barbie. I think his Barbie take was a miss, but I can understand it. Let's see how badly Pillar of Garbage misunderstands it.
According to a recent video from everyone's favorite YouTuber, The Critical Drinker, the answer to those questions is an emphatic yes. The truth, though, isn't quite so simple, and in fact, that video says a good deal more about the drinker and his critical practice than you might have thought. Join me as we wade through a truly baffling review and investigate the way the drinker continues to mislead his audience, the way contentious narratives are invoked to disguise poor criticism, and the way
Yes, I will agree. I think he could have very easily made a better point saying that critical drinker's opinion bad because of bias and what one perceives as negative. Someone, of course, he went for white people. Yeah, of course. Because he assumes all these anti-woke peoples are just targeting white males. Sorry, cis white males. The gay white males probably don't care. Trans white males, oh, that's a whole mess I don't even want to get into. But yeah, this guy. Oof.
the drinker and his critical practice than you might have thought. Join me as we wade through a truly baffling review and investigate the way the drinker continues to mislead his audience, the way contentious narratives are invoked to disguise poor criticism, and the way this
Contentious ideas invoked to mislead his audience. And that's some heavy rhetoric right from the start before anything's said. He's done other videos. Maybe he's proven that, at least in his own particular biased mind. But you know what?
video illuminates the fundamental dilemma at the heart of the Critical Drinker's channel. Let's get into it. The Drinker's video starts and ends with the accusation that Warner deliberately misled the public as to the character of their film.
You guys really pulled off a miracle with this one, successfully duping all of us, including me, into believing that Barbie was going to be just another colourful, light-hearted, easygoing family comedy.
This is from the trailer, by the way.
Do you guys ever think about dying?
Anyway, the Drinker really hits this idea hard, hammering it home near the end in a way he doesn't often tend to do.
Yeah, I don't agree with Pog here's Zach phrasing in rhetoric, but yeah, generally talking about the marketing is something I tend to go with later, would go with later in a video if I include it at all. But you know what? It's more from the heart. Critical Drinker, more from the heart, and I can understand why he felt. And yeah, thought about dying just because she said that one line. What does that? I think his problem with the trailers and why he thinks it's misrepresented the dying part does not necessarily have anything to do with what he has issues with there.
Barbie really is a wolf in sheep's clothing, tricking people into watching it by promising one thing and delivering something very different. And I guess that's the thing that really struck me about this film. A lot of parents will have been duped into taking their daughters along to watch this movie, probably expecting the kind of breezy, colourful, family-friendly movie that was advertised, only to find them.
So the nearest thing the drinker's video has to a thesis or a through line, the string from which his usual motley assortment of nitpicks hang, is this idea that Warner pulled a fast one.
I think he's giving Critical Drinker too much freaking credit here. He's not an essayist like you're freaking probably bread tube inspired ass, but it's rather hard. Oh, my opinion on the film. Oh, I would give it, if I had to give it a rating, be a 7. It swings between 6. I can see why some people would give it higher than a 7. But that's in the context of absurdist satirical film. And yes, it definitely is misleading and very confusing. I do not blame anyone for actually feeling the way Critical Drinker does about this. Why misled? Recently came to the conclusion it's rather genius, but that is just the way it goes about. I have to use the example of Clue. Who would think of taking Barbie and making such a successful movie out of it? Was it the marketing, the writing, the acting, the something else in it? The curious discourse it created online? Even now, amongst my little group of thinkers, they still bring it up way too often. So do I. But still, it is an interesting media project that's really hard to judge. At the moment, I would give it a 7, so slightly past average. It's got a lot of good qualities, but it's got a lot of really weird things that I question why they weren't handled differently there. But yes, misframing of Barbie. No, misunderstanding of the marketing comparison to the movie would be the better way of saying it. And you can say, Critical Drinker, a little bit of a dupe for just falling into it. Again, they took Barbie, this famous doll line, sort of like how Clue took a board game and made an absolute awesome movie. That I would give 8 out of 10. Maybe 9. A little bit too high. It's always hard to actually rate comedies too high just because you can't expect the same thing out of something like Clue or Barbie as you do with most movies typically made more wholesale or within a certain framework. You need to leave your expectations at the door for some of these films. It'll just help you. And yeah, marketing, it's always going to fuck with you. Okay.
Tricked families into the cinema before blasting them with an agenda-driven misandrist adult film. So before we dig into the significance of the drink agenda-driven...
Did I miss something?
So the nearest thing the drinker's video has to a thesis or a through line, the string from which his usual motley assortment of nitpicks hang, is this idea that Warner pulled a fast one, tricked families into the cinema before blasting them with an agenda-driven misandrist adult film.
No, he's sharing his perspective based off of the marketing. Maybe he really believed that, and that would have been his mistake to have get such expectations from the marketing. People really need to stop believing the marketing. Marketing is just sort of get people in the doors. After that, and the feeling of betrayal, I think it's stupid, but it's understandable why some people, especially in today's society with false marketing, people should do more research before they do it. But I guess people are stupid and lazy in some regard. You really need to just not throw your money at everything, and that seems to be the idea nowadays sometimes, but that's a different matter altogether.
So before we dig into the significance of the drinker taking this angle, let's just check. Is he right? Shit, sorry, I don't know how that sound file got in the mix. Is he right? Well, no. Let's talk about the trailers. I can't play them whole.
Okay, yeah. So you say no. His idea about Barbie trailers is not right. Let's go.
all copyrights a beach. But hey, to make sure I'm not misrepresenting them in my discussion, the one teaser and 2 trailers Warner dropped for this bad boy that formed the backbone of the film's pre-release PR are linked in the description, so give them a watch now if you fancy. The initial teaser, the only real look at this film the world was given until like 3 months back, was, well, it's the Space Odyssey referencing opening sequence, played I think in full. Because you know what kids love, you know what those little guys just go nuts for, you know what gets them hyped about going to the pictures? Stanley Kubrick references. Those little bastards eat that shit up. But surely that's not the whole teaser. Well, no, of course not. There's also a 5-second montage of random clips.
Oh, look, he conveniently left out the part the critical drinker would have had an issue with, and I'm pretty sure he had an issue with the video. After that scene where they start bashing their baby dolls against the ground. I don't have that much of an issue. If you're familiar with the scene in Stanley Kubrick, which even a lot of adults aren't, it's still something. Maybe he's not educated on Stanley Kubrick. I can understand critical drinker might not be down that pathway, but you know what? Oh, yeah. See, the film had good marketing and was not for kids. I can see why people were slightly deceived if they didn't actually care, didn't actually really think about it and catch some of the little stuff in there, like the Stanley Kubrick sort of motif there. So I'm not saying critical drinker is well informed on his filmography, but you know what?
Closing it out. So, you know, at this point, is Barbie setting itself up as a lightweight kids flick, or is it maybe signaling it'll be a more thoughtful and adult affair? You'll have to decide that one, I guess.
Yes, you added. Was that in the trailer? Seriously, I think this is sort of deceitful here.
Kids flick, or is it maybe signaling it'll be a more thoughtful and adult affair? You'll have to decide that one, I guess. And those random clips focus on the cast, show off Margot Robbie, Ryan Gosling.
Okay, let's check. He said he put him in the trailer. Let's see if he was honest about that. Oh, alternative title. Brewski beer overdose, and it's constant. Oh, that's horrible. Look, he's got his plugs. Support my work. Rather not. Sorry, man. Mastodon, of course. Let's see the teaser. Does any of them have that sort of clip that he had in there? I don't want to get hit with copyright either, so let's just go through here. Do you? Oh. They do have it. Oh, okay. This is the teaser. Can't be sure that critical drinker saw that. Oh, I didn't even put that on. Okay. Well, he basically. Let's do the main trailer. Let's see if critical drinker did not see the trailer. Let's see if he did not do the trailer. If he missed that first teaser trailer, because sometimes teaser trailers, okay. Anything in this that sort of signifies it's going to be about feminism at all? Maybe those guys, if you look really deeply into it. And Ken in the back. I mean, maybe if you're being very observant and caring a lot about this, maybe you can say that critical drinker was an idiot with the trailer. So maybe you just saw the main trailer. Let's see if there's anything in here to really the second teaser, which probably was, well, I can't say he saw any of this. Okay, anything in general, all Barbies. Okay, we're established by adding that scene in. He was not being dishonest there. Okay, want to establish that real quick. Still, some of his rhetoric and framing seems to be off, but at least he's not being dishonest by putting the baby thing.
Oriented. Not a kids film, but a film kids can enjoy along, but is instead very clearly a complication or subversion of the lighthearted, somewhat passé IP. Kubrick reference is recognizing their favorite SNL alumni. Yeah, anyway, the rest of these trailers gesture toward a similar direction. I think that's fair to say. I mean, you might look at the trailers and see the sex jokes and the 80s folk song sing-along. You might see a project driven more by star power than by its somewhat passé IP. You might see Barbie say she's been thinking about death. You might see a film, the premise of which
Yes, that does not necessarily be an element that Critical Drinker would dislike. The hero's journey, which Barbie does have. Even Shoe and Head's boyfriend made a whole video how Barbie's a conservative movie. I think it's a bit of a hot take because conservative movies, the hero's journey and the absurdist arc tend to follow very similar. And I think this might been a merger between the two. That's why I can't give it high praise, but I'll give it higher praise than most people with roughly a 7 with a large error bar measure.
isn't light-hearted, easygoing Barbie fun time, yay, but is instead very clearly a complication or subversion of the light-hearted, easygoing Barbie fun time, yay.
And he was supposed to get this all from the trailers. Yay. That's expecting way too much out of freaking Critical Drinker. Okay. He's just talking about the marketing now and why I said I disagree with his understanding of the marketing, but I was not looking forward. I was like, yeah, Barbie movie, probably going to be crap. It surprised me with what it was. So maybe you can say misrepresent it, but I didn't pay attention to marketing. Maybe Critical Drinker didn't pay that closely attention to the marketing either. Hard to say. Maybe he was being a bit dishonest by ramping up the point about the marketing, or maybe he just saw what he wanted to see. A lot of people with certain bias, even small bias, which definitely is not the Critical Drinker. He has a lot less bias than like Friday Night Tights crew, but yeah, Shoe and Head's boyfriend. I can never say his name. Never want to. Let's hope she dumps him. He seems interesting, but rather boring, stuffy, post-liberalism conservative, which is better than some of the other wacky branches that came out of freaking the right wing recently. Monarchist, libertarian monarchist, hidden soon.
You might expect when hearing the phrase Barbie movie. A film that looks to be family friendly, sure, but not necessarily family oriented. Not a kids film, but a film kids can enjoy alongside their parents.
You do not discount anything. You just sort of like, oh, I said all this stuff about Barbie, but now I'm sort of supporting Critical Drinker's point here. Good job. Just understand. At least he is understanding Critical Drinker a little bit better than TurfNation. Bravo, Pog.
You might look to the trailers and see all that, or you might not see it. The drinker certainly didn't, or at least he claims not to have. But
Okay. Nice. Thank you. He at least did that clarification. He has his doubt, which is understandable.
balance, I'm going to say yes. That big idea he opens with is pretty clearly a misrepresentation of the film's PR, and I don't anticipate a lot of pushback on that.
What? There is very little misrepresentation of the marketing. He just had a different understanding. Yeah, the death line should have. But you know what? Maybe he thought they were going to go on a little adventure from the marketing and it wouldn't be full of feminism. The marketing did not show all the feminism, except for that one scene, the Stanley Kubrick thing. And they just pile on from it from there. It's a bad impression for most people who are even slightly right-leaning. Right-leaning?
If that's granted, then yeah, bro looks like a clown, but more importantly, great news. We can proceed with the video and get on our way toward the conclusion. That payoff's gonna be a doozy. But here's the thing, the quality of and intentions behind the rest of the Drinkers review.
Why does everyone do
So
that?
they've been duped into taking their daughters along.
Why does everyone do that? Here's the thing, and show the thing. Are you a comic book channel? I understand why comic book channels would do it. Why do you do it? Does he do comic books? I'm not going to check. Maybe I'll check it then. Still weird.
To watch this movie, probably expecting the kind of breezy, colourful, family-friendly movie that was advertised, only to find them.
So the nearest thing the Drinkers video has to a thesis or a through line, the string from which is
I went back to the future.
not to have. But on balance, I'm going to say yes. That big idea he opens with is pretty clearly a misrepresentation of the film's PR, and I don't anticipate a lot of pushback on that. If that's granted, then yeah, bro looks like a clown.
Oh, if that's granted, bro looks like a clown. I would say misunderstanding in the marketing instead of misrepresentation. And that does not contradict with what he's saying at all. Okay, maybe he wasn't as observant. I personally, from a lot of stuff I've seen, he misses a lot of things, but he catches a lot of things and brings up some very good points outside of some other things like that.
But more importantly, great news. We can proceed with the video and get on our way toward the conclusion. That payoff's going to be a doozy. But
Yeah,
here's
who
the thing.
knows?
The quality of and intentions behind the rest of the drinkers' review also play a role in that conclusion. So really sorry. I know you guys hate it when I go through a drinker video and pluck it apart, but it looks like we've got to do at least a little of this. One bit I really like is here.
All the important jobs are done by the Barbies, and the Kens just kind of exist. They've got no inherent value, they contribute nothing, they have no power or say in how their society is run, and they're basically looked down on as a bit silly
Valid point approaching. Loading. Are you going to find it?
and irrelevant by the Barbies. Oh my goodness, what could the writers possibly be trying to tell us about their views on men?
What we
Yeah, that's an abstraction from Critical Drinker that seems a little too far-fetched. It's just a view of how the Barbies exist in the world. And sadly, I'm probably going to be criticizing Critical Drinker in some points and Pog on other points, but I'm trying to be fair and balanced, and I have a certain perspective. So everyone keep that in mind. And I'm not going to nitpick like, why did he fade out line? Just cut it, dude. You're probably right. It probably gets annoying. I don't like to nitpick, but it's fair enough. It's fair enough. IJP.
see here is the drinker brushing right up against meaningful criticism and then blowing right past it. I'll expound. Let's put our thinking caps on. In a film about femininity and about female existence under patriarchy, this idea the film plays with now and then, that Kens are eye candy, are peripheral, that they don't get an equal slice of the pie, what could this mean? Could it be a tongue-in-cheek inversion of our familiar gender politic? Could the point here be a sort of
Oh, okay. That is quite interesting. I'm going to have to go back. Oh, so close to the point, but misses it. I agree. He misses it, but are you getting it?
past it? I'll expound. Let's put our thinking caps on. In a film about femininity and about female existence under patriarchy, this idea the film plays with now and then, that Kens are eye candy, are peripheral, that they don't get an equal slice of the pie, what could this mean? Could it be a tongue-in-cheek inversion of our familiar gender politic? Could the point here be a sort of defamiliarization of the role women are often still forced into, flipping those traits, eye candy, peripheral, subordinate, back onto male characters in order to highlight how and why society's foisting of these upon anyone is a problem? Or could the fact that, regardless of context, men are on the bottom rung of the ladder, are subservient, simply mean film thinks men bad? The creators hate men, and that's that.
Yeah. Again, Critical Drinker's point was rather reductive. Does he expound on it further? And what about your take on it? You're reading too much into this, and I don't see your reading. These are Barbies. This is how the world's set up. It's all about the Barbies. The men are just accessories. There's lines later to sort of show. Women, some of them aren't going to care about the Kens. The mother character, America Farage or whatever. She's like, oh, I never had a kid. Obviously, her Barbie wasn't concerned with her kid. Kens are side product. Both of these people, I think, are reading way too deeply into this overall. But I can admit, I could be wrong. Everyone could be wrong. It could just be a mind fuck just to fuck with people. And that would actually be awesome, in my opinion. We have no actual opinions. We're just going to fuck with people by putting all these sort of little elements in that can be misconstrued by different peoples of different, as I said, definitely seem like a Rorschach test for people watching this movie. Some people will see woke, some people will see like basic bitch feminism, and some people will just, most people will probably just find it a nice, enjoyable, quirky, stupid little movie. All comes down to the perspective there.
The drinker hitches his cart to the latter option, and that's both kind of funny and a huge missed opportunity to actually see.
And I like that it says bad criticism. There isn't any criticism yet. So maybe the section's, yeah, it's long. Maybe just set up. Let me not go off the chapter titles here.
Something halfway insightful. See, symbolically speaking, the way Barbie Land works is twofold. The subordination of the Kens shows the drawbacks of our currently existing gender imbalances, while the
Oh, So you agree with the dude. Fair enough. Okay. I mean, maybe they were trying to do that. Frankly, it just doesn't fit the world. I think it just is the easiest thing to map on top for most people. And maybe even the people writing sort of picked that up as they went along. But the intention of making it that, initial seed of it, I don't think was initially there. Just because of how it was handled and how Greta actually explains her process of making a movie. But again, could be wrong.
Barbie's successes show the heights women could achieve were these imbalances not a factor. Yes, there is an inequality here, but it's one being used to make a point about equality. And crucially, something the drinker seems to miss later on as well.
Yeah, I don't agree with that also, because there ends up with no equality at the end. It goes back to the status quo with a slight little understanding between the Barbies and Kens. Not much better. Basically, status quo plus. Okay. Sort of like society now. You got the status quo, and people try to add that plus to it, just like they try to add that plus to LGBTQT, blah, blah, blah. Plus makes everything worse, not better, as some people like atheism plus. Oh, God, such a mess. Plus, generally, plus to a title does not make anything better.
Barbieland is not the film's recommendation. It's not a blueprint for gender utopia. It isn't reality. It can never be, and it was never supposed to be. Even
Okay, a point I can agree with. Barbieland was never supposed to be reality. Thank you. Okay. At least a little bit of intelligence here, comparison to Turf Nations. Oh, God, that was just reductive as all hell.
in universe, it was explicitly created for a purpose. That purpose being the inspiration of girls, to show them what they could do and be personally. That is the idea here. But, well, that concept is a little messy. Given the Ken
Yeah, I will actually agree with that. It was pretty well stated. That's the idea. How do they play with that idea going forward? That's a different story altogether. I'm bearing the lead here.
Barbies and Ellens alike are seemingly endowed with some degree of sapience, or at least the potential for it. Barbieland's limited opportunities for Kens is a bit troubling. The film kinda hangs a lantern on this with the closing voiceover, but lampshading an issue isn't the same as resolving that issue. So yes, this would, I think, be grounds for a valid critique of, if not the film's ideas, then at least the way those ideas are delivered. But you see the issue, right? To get to this knot, you have to actually think about the film, about the things that make you uneasy, about why they make you uneasy.
Okay, it's about the things that make you uneasy. That you have to think about the film. You just weren't paying attention enough. Or here's just a little thought. Maybe they have a different perspective on storytelling, symbology in movies that will give them a completely different reading. Okay? Going through this, seeing all the references from movies and trying to, I can imagine trying to build, going through the process as Greta sort of laid it out there of how she wanted to build this movie off of a lot of references. I've had a live stream where I go over sort of it is sort of a left idea. I don't know if it's necessarily a left idea. It's more of a cultural postmodern. We're stuck. It's not just a leftist thing. Okay. You'll have right people are still going to be pulled along with society and the Overton window with this postmodern society we're going into. Gay marriage wasn't accepted till like 10 years ago, where the conservatives might be kicking and screaming about the pull that they are getting to the left, but you have to accept reality and not whine like Heel's first babyface about things that have been going along. And use a better example, dude.
Before you hit record. And honestly, I'm probably giving the guy too much credit by assuming any of that even registered with him, that he didn't just
Oh yes, atheism plus. Atheism plus just destroyed that community. The whole atheist movement. This was years ago. Even I wasn't really into it, but it was basically social justice. That's what divided the atheist or skeptic community originally. I don't know the details. I'm sure there's plenty of videos, and I just know how bad it is. Atheism plus, put the identity politics into it. identity politics sort of ruined Occupy Wall Street. Not that Occupy Wall Street would have actually probably succeeded given how it was, but the sort of identity politics of sorry, said that completely wrong. The sort of introduction of identity politics, the progressive stack into Occupy Wall Street was just like the death knell. And that's probably was a symbolism that we should use it for everything. And it's been going on for a long time. And I'm hoping we're finally getting better with it. Stop with all that CRT is crap. Yeah. CRT derived, wokeism, call it whatever you want. Equality of men, women, maybe even some of the more sane other genders. Okay. I'm more inclusive than most people on my side of it, but that's a different story altogether.
Just woke spot the surface level dynamic of man being dominated by women and call it a day. After all, a broken clock is right twice a day. And by that same logic, if you let a half-cut fool rant for a couple of years about dozens of films, statistically, he is going to bump into some real problems eventually. That doesn't mean
Yes, some people are going to misdiagnose. I mean, as much as I like to shit on Heels versus Babyface about it, because it generally did not feel real, this seemed legitimate to me. Critical drinkers misunderstanding, misreading of this beginning and pretty much the whole movie. And trust me, I've gone actually deeper into critical drinkers' thought processes than most of these clowns. I reviewed his freaking latest book. That reading someone's writing can tell you a lot about what they prioritize in still storytelling. Why I thought it had some errors. Hell, just watch it if you want to. It was a weird experiment where I tried to keep it spoiler free while sort of getting into the nitty gritty. I don't know how it turned out. I like to do interesting things, and sometimes they don't always turn out the best.
mean he'll actually critique them. It doesn't even mean he's able to. It's just that, yeah, he'll end up mouthing off in their general vicinity.
You can critique anything. Whether or not your critique is good or bad is a different matter altogether. You should be a pro. You should be a component. Opponent? You should be someone saying all critiques are good. But no, you are a political actor, and anything that goes against your political agenda is the only type of bad criticism. No matter how bad the political actor, I might be being a little bit bad faith here, but that is definitely how it reads a lot of these post-bread tube essays come across. Extremely dumb also. I almost missed the whole bread tube. At least they seemed sensible and had arguments, even if they weren't very good, in my opinion.
Before going on to shout at more clouds. Moving on, this criticism is also a bit odd.
Like, one guy literally walks up to Barbie and slaps her in the ass in the middle of a crowded boardwalk, in broad daylight, in front of her boyfriends.
Go with me here. The real world in this film isn't all that real. Anyone who's seen the film will recall that things are often a little exaggerated. Or do Mattel executives regularly engage in high-octane car chases?
Yeah, I will agree with this. I don't understand why anyone thinks the real world is real here. Okay, I agree. Perspective thing. It's just the division, the black and white thinking that most people fall into. And definitely the movie could have done better to ease the audience into the real world being more comically silly than our actual real world. But I still think it establishes that the real world is, as he said, a hyper exaggeration, surrealism, magical reality. I don't know. Terminology is not my cup of tea.
Maybe that's an America thing. Viewers from LA, please do tell me the last time you saw Enon Kreitz gunning it down Pacific Avenue. Given this, it seems strange that this moment gets targeted by the realism police and something like the Mattel chase doesn't, when public sexual assault is the thing that, you know, actually happens sometimes. But, of course...
Yeah, well, this, they're just coming in. This is right off the bat. Right off the bat. That... He sees this. This is going along. If you're thinking about watching the movie, the sort of car chase scene happens after the Scooby-Doo, after a lot of silly stuff, such as a stereotypical Barbie meeting a dead ghost who rents a room in Mattel for some darn reason, said by Will Ferrell's character. Okay, after that, it's established. It should be established, but you can't retroactively go back and sort of make sense that this is in the real world. But for a review, he should be prefacing it that there's some doubts about if the real world is real, but I understand why he would not take that perspective. Hell, Stitch and Adam really doubled down on that idea also and defended it rather hard with some really stupid ideas, in my personal opinion.
So the idea of an otherwise realistic world contorting itself to overstate the frequency of assault by evil men supports the spiteful hatred of men line the drink is pursuing, and by extension, the corruptive leftist propaganda problem it implies, more than a recognition of this world's wider exaggerated realism.
Very good point.
So that recognition isn't given, because withholding it allows this narrative to continue forming. And this kind of thing makes up the body of the drinker's video. Rapid-fire nitpicks that come and go just quick enough to hide the fact that most don't really work.
Goes quick enough to hide the fact. Okay, examples, please. I mean, is this the example? Not enough examples. A lot of talk from you. They still just overwhelm the points that they bring up about critical drinker, the clips they show, and how much volume and context they add themselves. You got to love that. Oh, took it out of context. You added in a whole bunch of fucking context that wasn't originally included in dipshit. I don't care about your bullshit, out of context, misleading bullshit. You establish nothing. You just gallop your way with not as much buzzwords as TurfNation, but still with a lot of assumptions that I don't think you have the personal perspective to actually lay out properly or understand and be tolerant towards more right-wing and conservative, not even conservative, just conservative thoughts that even maybe normies might have. But you know what? So tolerant.
For instance, he notes Barbies change depending on how their owners play with them, and then goes on to criticize this concept by listing things which are not their owners playing with them.
Do you have any idea how many Barbie dolls must get broken, or thrown in trash compactors, or set on fire, or eaten by family pets every single day?
Or take this reading the drinker offers.
Hold on. Don't move on. Don't move on, jackass. That's a legitimate point. The logic does not hold up one-to-one. So you have to assume the story is not correct in how the Barbie conceptualized. Okay, they never explain it. It's not a one-to-one. Just like someone brought up, there's a lot of freaking Kens. All of a sudden, then there's not enough Kens, but there seems to be one-to-one Barbie to Kens. Okay, I shouldn't even brought it up, but yeah, there's a lot of weird logic here. And within the context of this movie, I don't see it as much of an issue, given how stupid it is, and you have the narrator interjecting with some of her stupid commentary. I think it's pretty clear there's not a lot of logic here. And for people who want logic in storytelling, this thinking about that concept is going to have them ask questions. But you know what? Don't ask any questions of why, maybe. Just assume because you don't agree with him that it's bad criticism. That's actually a good point, but a point that I would counter with the sort of context of the world. I wouldn't just dismiss it. I would just counter it with my own. And people don't necessarily have to agree with it.
So you're a woman who wants to be a mother or a homemaker? Screw you, fascist!
If you're thinking, hang on, what about America Ferrera's character? Arguably the real heart of this film. What about the way she very clearly draws her strength, the strength that saves Barbie and Barbieland from motherhood? What about that already iconic line near the film's close?
Whoa, he is reading way too much. She draws her strength from motherhood. It powers her up like a Super Saiyan. She goes, daughter A. No, it's a conflict. She's still in doubt, even by then. She gets a little bit of a confidence booster later on when Barbie's down in the house, and that sort of get 'em, girl mentality kicks in. But sheesh, draws her strength on freaking motherhood. It's a theme. It's definitely a strong theme throughout the movie. But this is another reason I can't rate Barbie too high. The themes are extremely slippery and hard to catch. Motherhood's definitely intertwined with a lot of other sort of issues in there.
Or take this reading the drinker offers.
So you're a woman who wants to be a mother or a homemaker? Screw you, fascist!
If you're thinking, hang on, what about America Ferrera's character? Arguably the real heart of this film. What about the way she very clearly draws her strength, the strength that saves Barbie and Barbieland from motherhood? What about that already iconic line near the film's close? We mothers stand still so that our daughters can look back and see how far they've come. The way that sentiment and the film more widely celebrates the mother-daughter bond. If you're thinking about any of those things, stop thinking about them, I guess. If that's not enough.
You bring up a whole bunch of points and just stop thinking about them. It doesn't matter. Okay, maybe he just led us on. He subverted our expectations in this video. If so, bravo. But sort of doubting it. This is a blind walkthrough of this.
How about the way Drinker acts confused by the Barbie's quick subjugation?
Oh, yeah, he's just moving past it. He's assuming that as a absolute truth, even though there's a lot of freaking issues with that. Motherhood, femininity, the patriarchy, feminism, corporate greed, comparison to utopia. It's just a mishmash of freaking little things. Yeah, but the daughter hated her mother. Her mother was extremely depressed because of said hatred. I don't know what to say about this other thing, Tiamon, but you do you.
How the supposedly intelligent, empowered, and self-confident Barbies were so easily subjugated by Ken and the others. This is the kind of awkward little...
Despite there being a line in the film which directly answers that question. Maybe he didn't like the explanation, though, and elected to ignore it. You know, like an intelligent person would.
Okay,
And
did I...
The others... This...
Okay,
if that's not enough, how about the way Drew stands still so that our daughters can look back and see how far
I must have missed something.
celebrates the mother-daughter bond? If you're thinking about any of those things, stop thinking about them, I guess.
I really must have missed something because the through line to that did not make sense to me.
If that's not enough, how about the way Drinker acts confused by the Barbie's quick subjugation?
Question how the supposedly intelligent, empowered, and self-confident Barbies were so easily subjugated by Ken and the others. This is the kind of awkward little...
Despite there being a line in the film which directly answers that question. Maybe he didn't like the explanation, though, and elected to ignore it. You know, like an intelligent person would. And...
Please explain. So... Oh, this is just getting... Talking about freaking critical drinkers being nitpicky. You know, maybe a little bit of detail. I mean, critical drinker isn't great with the details, but maybe if you give a little detail yourself instead of just leaving it hanging, even worse than critical drinker, in my opinion, at least. Maybe you don't see it that way. Maybe you see it as a self-evident truth, but I am not understanding, but this is just a intersection between these two videos. I'm sure it makes some sense.
Question how the supposedly intelligent, empowered, and self-confident Barbies were so easily subjugated by...
Okay, so the supposedly powerful got so easily subjugated by the Kens. I disagree with that sort of framing by the critical drinker. Absolutely. It's a status quo. They don't question that reality they live in. Someone brings a new idea. The explanation of the film is believable enough, in my personal opinion. Makes logical sense. The metaphor they use. But yes, critical drinker is placing a certain ideology on the Barbies that I don't think that can be found in the actual text of the film. That's my personal opinion. And not everyone's gonna get everything right all the time. And for the most part, critical drinker is more right than wrong. Definitely in comparison to a lot of other critics out there.
By Ken and the others, this is the kind of awkward little...
Despite there being a line in the film which directly answers that question. Maybe he...
Yes, maybe say the line that they have no immunity to outside the patriarchy or any ideas brought in. Okay, because they just go about any ideas introduced are just spread like a virus. Is it true? Is it not? I don't know. The movie plays with the sense of what is real and what's not. Obviously, the real world real or not? A lot of people, in my opinion, stupidly thinking the real world is actually a representation of the real world. I don't think so. And the Barbie world is clearly just really stupid, and they have the wrong idea as it's shown in the film itself. So a lot of the ideas about it can't be taken seriously. Now, do you think the author or the intent behind the film meant to take them seriously? That's a different in perspective. I think there's a slight niche that, yeah, we want these ideas to be explored, but not taken seriously because through comedy and abstract art, we can understand things better. Other people will think it's a real shout to people trying to spread, as the critical drinker would say, the message. And I can't totally discount that completely. I just think it's wrong, personally. Was it dishonest? I don't think so. I just think in today's society, some things are understandable. Maybe I should be harder on critical drinker as I was with Az, but oh God, I cannot see how Az at his reaction just seems like either stupidity or bait, which would fall under dishonesty for, views and be a symbol for the anti-woke. Why anti-woke is sort of getting a bad rap now. Ugh.
Didn't like the explanation though, and elected to ignore it, like an intelligent person would. And shockingly, some of these nitpicks are just outright untrue.
The real world and all the men in it are shown to be universally, irredeemably horrible, because of course they are.
What about Duolingo husband, the he's just like me for real king? What about him? Did I blink during a split-second shot of him kicking a dog or something?
Universally, irredeemably horrible, because of course they are.
What about Duolingo husband, the he's just like correctly answers that question? Maybe he didn't like the explanation though, and elected to ignore it, like an intelligent person would. And shockingly, some of these...
I'm not going to go off of his insults. His insults are uncalled for and unfounded, especially since I think he's not very intelligent. He just goes with the standard NPC. Okay, I'll give him a plus on the standard NPC script. But remember what I said about plus. Doesn't always mean better.
Nitpicks are just outright untrue.
The real world and all the men in it are shown to be universally, irredeemably horrible, because of course they are.
What about Duolingo husband?
Pillar or garbage? Why does Pillar have bad reactions? Because he's a leftist, most likely. That would be my assumption. It definitely tunes your brain in a way where you can think all people of conservative perspectives are evil or have malicious intent. And even those darn dirty centrists are almost as bad, and they enable those dirty Nazis over there. But that's just a theory.
He's just like me for real king. What about him? Did I blink during a split-second shot of him kicking a dog or something? Turns out, if you accuse any of these guys of lying when they demonstrably are, a bunch of their buddies sick.
Demonstrably are. And sick, okay? They're making content out of you like you're making content out of critical drinker. Don't be a bitch about it, okay? Bunch of their buddies.
Goons on you, so at the risk of that happening again, gee, I'm noticing a trend. Look, I'm not going...
Yeah, and he didn't. I even watched your video on it. It's dog shit, okay? The clips, TurfNation might have been correct. Those might have been your strongest points. And they're still just using such a perspective. Oh, he muted the audio. If he didn't mute the audio, you would know this little thing, which would signal this little thing here. And therefore, critical drinkers being dishonest. Except for if you take critical drinkers video style, he does that a lot. Okay. Maybe it inherently misrepresents some scenes, but you also clearly, to the other end, misrepresented what he was trying to do that
to mince my
equally.
words. This is bad criticism. I don't just mean it's based.
Two wrongs don't make a right. And what's bad criticism? It's a bad reading. Based on if he was right in his initial impressions of the Barbie movie, it might not be actually bad criticism. But this is why I want to sort of drill down and sort of question my initial impressions of this. And frankly, I can't get anything great out of this. This seems like bad criticism itself. Assuming a tent. He's assuming a tent, at least better than assuming that critical drinker like TurfNation was doing, is trying to appease the audience. He is actually making a somewhat I don't agree exactly with him, but I do agree the critical drinker's impression of what he does in Barbie is incorrect. His impressions, his initial impressions on those are wrong. So therefore, it will throw off his actual criticism. So technically, I would call it bad criticism, but if his initial impressions were correct, it would be good criticism. So that's sort of weird. I just gotta
Based
clarify
on
that.
misleading or untrue observations, it's also just bad criticism, actively hostile to complex thought. Barbieland privileges
Oh, hostile to complex thought. Yeah, I doubt you have that in spades either. I doubt. Yeah, you have not shown any. You even said, oh, risk of getting attacked by a group of this guy's friends. Dude, you criticize people online. That's what you're going to take. You give it back and you don't be a little bitch about it and whine about it. Okay, don't think you're that important. Okay, they're willing to probably hear you out if you want to debate, which has inherited problems, but they've been shown to want to do that. Instead, you've been on the Phantom Initiative stream who just blindly hate. Opposed to you, who I can understand Pillar Garbage's understanding of this. So there's a little bit of my good faith, but still, the it's just you're taking way too much at face value from your own biased perspective. And I think that could actually cover most of this, everything I said. But I'll still keep them watching, making notes where I can.
Barbies. Wow, I guess that means the film wants us to oppress men. New gender roles are adopted and abandoned quickly by both Kens and Barbies, following their exposure to LA business patriarchy. Isn't that an awkward little paradox? Wait, what's that? You're saying it's intentional to point out the way gender is learned and the way patriarchy can seem attractive, even to the women and men.
Okay. First thing, when does the movie say that patriarchy's learned? Oh, I guess Ken does learn it from books. Does he understand a realistic version of it? And would it take that quickly for him to just, because some, and let's go back a bit. I hate doing this, but this is actually quite interested enough that I can go about it with my flappery here.
A bunch of their buddies sick their goons on you, so at the risk of that happening again, gee, I'm noticing a trend. Look, I'm not going to mince my words.
What trend? You, at the risk of creating a trend, would be the, yeah, I'm being nitpicky with his words.
This is bad criticism. I don't just mean it's based on misleading or untrue observations, it's also just bad criticism, actively hostile to complex thought. Barbieland privileges Barbies? Wow, I guess that means the film wants us to oppress men. New gender roles are adopted and abandoned quickly by both Kens and Barbies, following their exposure to LA business patriarchy. Isn't that an awkward little paradox? Wait.
I almost want to say this is a straw man, but he might actually be right here. Could be a straw man. It's definitely done in the sort of condescending tone. He actually might have a point here that this is the reading, actually a fair reading from Critical Drinker's video. So, as I said, yeah, some points here, but not acknowledging his perspective might be skewed. That would create this bad criticism. Maybe he'll bring it up.
Wait, what's that? You're saying it's intentional to point out the way gender is learned and the way patriarchy can seem attractive, even to the women and men it harms. No, sorry, mate, don't care. Those words are too big. The review portion of his video.
Just a dismissal. Yeah, dismissal. 2 word.
Video finishes with a ham-fisted attempt to apply the gender politic of Barbieland to our reality and then to criticize the result, despite, again, that not being the point of Barbieland. But this hostility to just thinking is made most apparent about midway.
Okay. I agree with everything. This hostility. There might be a little bit of a, okay, maybe he's right about the hostility. Okay. But yeah, the Rorschach test, and definitely Critical Drinker failed on this. This is the problem with artists out there. Sometimes they leave freaking blank canvas and just throw paint blobs at this. This is how I'm starting to see this, and what comes out. And even going through this movie a couple times, I can't tell if I know some things were definitely intentional, but was it to put together in an intentional way to sort of give the impression that either of these men are sort of putting out? I think that's a really big assumption there. I really going through this, thinking about it, it's too hard to tell. And definitely their readings are off. If there's feminism and patriarchy criticism, it's plastic that feminism and red pill patriarchy. So not realistic depictions of either of those sort of ideologies there.
Way through the drinker's video.
Barbie eventually finds the kid who plays with her, who turns out to be an asshole communist activist feminist that I think the movie wants us to empathize with, but fuck me, for the life of...
Yeah, empathize. Critical drinker, really, I don't know why he assumes the audience is supposed to empathize. She makes... You have that androgynous little girl try to warn Barbie off of it. They tell you, don't mess with this girl. Why does critical drinker think that the audience is supposed to empathize? Because she actually becomes less of an asshole, a little bit more humorous later. You can warm to her a little maybe, but seriously, you're like, this girl's gonna be a problem, but maybe she'll be okay. Grow up better now. And she would have been a completely insane girl if this event didn't happen. So bravo, Barbie. You stopped another one of these crazy people just not having their ideas exposed. And that's definitely a good idea put in here. Challenging people's thoughts process. And even though I think Critical Drinker went way off base with his initial impressions, which, yeah, did create a rather unbalanced review of the Barbie movie, that is different than how Pillar of Garbage is laying out these Critical Drinkers' attempt on this. Maybe he thinks too highly of it. I don't know. This is just a weird Gishgalp thing here. Not Gishgalp. I like the term Gishgalp. That's why I keep using it, but not quite. It's quite just looking at the negative impressions without really maybe he's trying to avoid calling him a right winger, which if that's what he's doing, that might be fair. But I really don't know about that either.
I could not tell you why.
Let me help you out. Surprisingly, no, we're not really supposed to empathize with the girl who calls Barbie a fascist and makes her cry. Maybe the girl does raise a kind of valid point or two, but she does so in...
Maybe she brings up a valid point or two. Okay, I agree with him up till that point. Okay, yeah, I'll give you a half point for that. Pillar of Garbage, half point.
in a really mean way, and that's bad. We're not supposed to be on her side yet. Because there's this cool thing called
yet. You're never supposed to be on her side. You're supposed to be tolerant of her. Tolerance. That should be the aim. But you know what? I don't know if that's a lot of people's aim, and that's just sad to me.
an arc she gets. Over the course of the film, by reconnecting with her mother, she begins to see the worth in Barbie and the value of aspirational figures, just as Barbie sees that the kid has a point, that aspirational symbols aren't solutions.
Huh? Aspirational figures, man. Awesome. There's a certain amount of modeling, but that's found throughout the whole thing. Relation, empathy, understanding. Yeah, a lot of, but I guess it works well enough that I'm not going to dock too many points off of Pillar of Garbage, but sort of saying the audience is supposed to like her at all. Tolerate is a better word. Some people will like her. People who probably were like her when they're younger. And this is a film for women. So I'm sure there's some women who remember that rebellious age where they just latched whatever. Nowadays, it's this progressive politics, the leftism, wokeism, whatever term you want to use for it, the message. But yeah, bad reading and go back because I lost the plot in what I was saying myself. For shame me.
That she begins to see the worth in Barbie and the value of aspirational figures, just as Barbie sees that the kid has a point, that aspirational symbols aren't solutions.
Oh yeah. I forgot the point. When does Barbie see she has a point? It's the mother who really influences Barbie. When does the daughter acknowledge any point from the daughter? Maybe I'm wrong. I watched it at least twice. I think actually 3 times, but hard to tell sometimes.
In themselves, yada yada yada. We're supposed to like where she ends up, not where she starts, which is honestly a kind of mean-spirited character.
Yeah, it is a case of character growth. Unfortunately, it's undercut by how silly and absurd the whole film is. And I mean, normally I would acknowledge some growth. I would say some flaws. And I think a lot of people will acknowledge she has some growth, but it feels unearned. And in most typical forms, I would say it, but going into Barbie land, magic. And sometimes you got to let go when you're in magical land.
Caricature of Zoomer leftism. But in a supremely telling moment, the drinker seems to have spotted that caricature, filtered it through the Hollywood.
I have to wonder why he keeps doing that face on, trying to make him look menacing and strong and tough like man. Trying to intimidate your audience with how critical drinkers glare and shade, stare. I just don't understand that choice from Pillar of Garbage here. Throwing that out. Maybe just to break up the freaking clips he's using of Barbie. Copyright sucks, so I can understand why he's using this instead of full screen like me. Well, close enough to it.
Is leftist and evil pipe he's got in his brain and landed on the idea that we're supposed to like.
He never said a leftist is evil, okay? He's saying he disagrees with how it sort of pushes forward the messaging. And the messaging is pushed since it's for children. Okay. Yeah, probably a little bit of reacting to the culture around internet culture, trans the kids and thing, probably permeated his brain. But there's really no correlation with trans and the kids. So I don't know why he had such a vicious reaction to this, except for his concept of comedy is probably much more limited considering the sort of stories he writes. I'm thinking comedy is going to be Achilles' heel. I'm sure he gets a lot of types of comedy, but I think this type of postmodern comedy, I even don't think the term comedy or satire or absurdism fits this entirely. But still,
Like and agree with everything nasty the girl says simply because it's couched in a woke aesthetic. That slippage is amusing and illustrates how thoughtless,
Okay,
how
yeah.
agree with everything nasty is leftist and evil spirited caricature of Zoomer leftism. But in a supremely telling moment, the drinker seems to have spotted that caricature, filtered it through the Hollywood is leftist and evil pipe he's got in his brain, and landed on the idea that we're supposed to like and agree with everything nasty the girl says simply because it's couched in a woke aesthetic.
Okay. Critical Drinker never said that. Okay. That maybe not an intentional straw man. I need to preface it, but that was a straw man. I thought the thing earlier was a straw man. Probably not. This is, even if it probably unintentional or intentional, I'm not going to assume bad intent on Pillar of Garbage's. Leftist has some really weird ideas about people who spout the standard right-wing talking points. And that's rather sad that neither side can sort of see through that garbage. Typically, Critical Drinker can pierce through that and can acknowledge the sort of a message of it. But he's definitely overreading this message here.
That slippage is amusing and illustrates how thoughtless, how knee-jerk this critique is. Woke means we're supposed to like it, and it's unlikable, so film bad.
He never said that. Okay. This is where your bias of Critical Drinkers showing through. Just because he talks about the message does not mean he thinks all woke things are bad. Okay. TurfNation nitpicked his little thing about point about Peter Parker and added in his assumption, a lot of assumptions about Peter Parker being a white male. There's other movies with white males and freaking his white male audience with no freaking evidence. So at least Pillar Garbage isn't going that bad, but this is sort of being a much better way of communicating this idea in a more abstract way, vague way, probably vague.
There is no self-awareness here. Again, this is bad criticism. This is all bad criticism, but it doesn't matter. The opening of the drink.
Oh, sorry. This is sort of brought to my mind. Yeah, this isn't really happening. But if it is even happening, it doesn't matter. That old meme. Okay. This isn't what you're saying it is. This isn't woke. But if it is woke, why is that a bad thing? It doesn't matter. Okay. A little bit different there. And cop out central here. The whole section, at least a small section, doesn't matter. Let's see his rationale for why it doesn't matter. That is very important, despite what people think.
His video lays out that misrepresentation of the film's PR, but it does something else too. It very consciously and very jarringly inserts Barbie into the canon of hated woke objects.
Barbie is like the deformed, mutated rage child of Captain Marvel, Ghostbusters 2016, and She-Hulk.
So I'm an expert at controlling my anger because I do it.
I don't remember asking you a goddamn thing.
It seems a very...
Okay, fair enough. I don't exactly like his wording there, but the spirit, I'll be fair enough to say the spirit of what he's saying seems mostly correct, especially by the clip. I've watched that video and I was disappointed in a different way than Pillar of Garbage by that video, Critical Drinker. But you know what? Different perspectives. And I can empathize with people on the left and right a little bit more than probably some people on the far left, far right, or even more in the middle, like I believe Critical Drinker to be. I'm not going to place him in a political place. He definitely has a more conservative understanding of writing and probably even culture, but can't make that assumption here.
Transparent move, serving to designate Barbie as a battleground in the war against wokeness, and to turn his video from a simple Barbie review into another installment in that war. If this is the case, the result of this scaling up is that this abstract narrative of wokeness supersedes.
The thing that really struck me about this film, a lot of parents will have been
I
duped
was trying to pause it. Oh, damn you, man. But yeah, good point. I think the drinkers just jaded with political correct garbage, and the most Hollywood films have been pushing. Yeah, I agree. There's been a lot of woke garbage out there, or what people call woke. I gotta correct it somewhat politically. Oh, you didn't even say. My brain is broken. I inserted woke into that myself. Sorry, man. Sorry, Daniel. But yeah. Okay. Yeah, that is fair enough. A lot of films I will acknowledge, especially coming out of Disney, is Wendy and Peter Pan. I agreed with that, with his sort of messaging on that. I agreed with his little points about the Little Mermaid remake, how somehow it had to be Ariel who finished off the evil Wicked Witch comparison to the Prince, who it was in the animated series. All those are good points that I cannot argue with. But for Barbie, yeah, he's misreading it in my personal opinion. And I think I'm less biased and have a wider scope of the artistic side. But trust me, I don't want people to go, art is garbage. You have to. Oh, I could be slightly brainwashed. I will admit my own biases. I understand the sort of perspective that some of these leftists, these artistes come from. There's a certain line that I'll give them good faith. But Pillar of Garbage here isn't even making any of the same arguments that it's a satirical, absurdist film that might throw people off extremely, because we don't have films like Barbie a lot. And this thing definitely is going to Rorschach test. Okay. And as I said, I can't blame anyone for thinking this is woke. But I can't blame Az for his horrible take. But that's a different story altogether. Pronouns! Oh, God, that's going to be my meme now. Till I get a new one. Every channel's got to have a meme. I should find something more original. Besides, oh, God, could go back to kurtosis. No! Okay, let me not talk about kurtosis. He's dealing with an idiot now, a bigger idiot than him.
View and the specifics of that film, to the legions of drinker viewers who are slurping the reactionary Kool-Aid, the quality of his review, the validity of
Vincent does have the woke mind virus, but Pillar strikes me as a moderate leftist in the UK. No, I understand the woke mind virus. I have a moderate position that there's some ideas we should entertain if they're practical, if they have a practical utility in the world and not just some ideology bullshit of how we get utopia. But of course, I know you're joking to a certain extent.
his objections.
Damn you, Tiamat.
All this becomes relatively unimportant because the battle is already won. The film is already designated as woke, and woke is already bad. It doesn't matter if he lies about the film. It doesn't matter if he thinks about.
Oh, God. Here is where he subtly throws in his political messaging. He's trying to sort of avoid it in certain terms, but I guess he can't avoid throwing this.
Already designated as woke, and woke is already bad.
Yep. DeSantis. Freedom from indoctrination. Stop woke. Bad. DeSantis. Bad man. Not as bad as Orange Man bad, but, still a different type of bad. All the conservatives. All bad. Just in different flavors. No nuance there. They're all just bad. And I'm being unfair, but it's funnier to be unfair with that.
It doesn't matter if he lies about the film. It doesn't matter if he thinks about the film. It doesn't matter if they think about the film. Because,
well, maybe he did think about the film. Okay. Yeah, as I said, going to be looping. Your assumptions are he had a reading which I and you both don't disagree. The Critical Drinker had a reading of the film that both I and Pillar of Garbage, which makes me feel a little dirty, but I actually could get into the nuance and would make an artistic argument for why Barbie is the way it is. Why Pillar of Garbage, I don't know if he has the backing in either theater, film, or anything like that to defend this film other than saying, oh, the crazy right-wingers are totally just calling it woke. Yeah, just saying woke doesn't mean anything is a complete cop-out and a reductionist of not accepting what right-wingers really mean. The confusion of woke is one of the worst things. And it's a practical utility. So we might have to just accept that woke has fallen to the wayside as Nazi and fascist is becoming nowadays. Some terms just get overused by stupid people, so they lose all meaning. Just say stupid, leftist, communistic brain rot. Takes a little bit longer. Woke is a lot more catchy, so I don't think it's going to be out of fashion too soon, but hopefully it gets toned down in who uses it. Hopefully mostly smarter people.
it isn't about whether or not the men are bad, about whether or not this detail or that is explained, or whether or not we're supposed to sympathize with the mean lefty girl. The narrative matters. The shoddy criticism that makes up the rest of a video like this.
And the narrative does not matter for you. Okay, you seem to be pushing this narrative. Look at the title, How Critical Drinker Misrepresents Barbie and Why That Matters. You are saying that's not a narrative you're trying to spin here? Do you even think you're correct? Or you think just because that's the particular ideology that you follow that everything must follow? Not all things are political. There are a certain amount of, even politics is just the dumbing down of more greater nuance philosophy and ideologies sort of for the general populace. Okay. Both the Democrats or any political party to the left. Other nations have a whole bunch of different left parties, or in a whole bunch of right parties. Not too much center parties, and that sort of sucks. But I understand why they're not really there. Not even libertarians are really centrist. No, really center. They're either right leaning, authoritarian, libertarian. It's a whole grab bag that I really don't want to get into.
Only needs to sound convincing, to scan once in order to legitimize that narrative and its subsumption of the work under review.
It's really hard to say that BBC forcing diversity standards for productions and representation is not what people would consider woke. Same thing with award programs that diversity quotas to qualify for these award shows. Sometimes you have to meet a certain amount of, quotas for representation. That's rather bullshit. Maybe there should be a special category for those who meet. This is just me being a dirty centrist here. Maybe there should be a special category for those who meet it, like best award for in the representation and best picture overall. They can even be the same things sometimes. Make a distinction. Okay. Oh, God. Sorry, I had a thought that aligned to bad things that I don't want to talk about on my own channel. Not political. I'm a dirty centrist. Remember that.
The result of this tendency writ large is a culture in which movies aren't worthwhile for their ideas, their performances, or how they're able to affect their viewers. They're worthwhile only insofar as they can be converted into clicks and into rhetoric. And let's return to that rhetoric, shall we?
What an inspiring message for impressionable young girls. The thing is, none of this would have been quite so insidious if the marketing hadn't done everything in its power to keep it a secret.
We're told that Warner and Mattel have tricked families into seeing their film, and that this is a problem.
Yeah, that is sort of what he's applying with what he's saying, and I disagree with that. I'm assuming he's going to disagree. But what he's going to sort of infer from his disagreement with critical drinkers' perspective probably isn't going to match with mine. But you know what? I'm actually tolerant. Let's see how tolerant Pog, pillar of garbage, is here.
This is, quote, insidious, not simply misleading. The language used suggests it's not just a question of whether little Timmy and Brenda are going to have a good time. The drinker recommends you don't bring your kids here, and that you'll thank him for that later.
Yeah, that's what he's doing. Okay.
It's not very often that I say this in my reviews, but if you're a parent and you're thinking about taking your kid...
He is correct. He doesn't say it too much, and this movie just broke him probably. And I really don't think he should have said this in reality. He shouldn't have put this out there. He really should have thought. I don't know what his thought process, or he talked to anyone about sort of the language he used. But yeah, disappointed.
It's along to see Barbie, then the drinker recommends you skip this one and do literally anything else with them. Believe me, you'll thank me later.
The implication being that bringing them would risk interpolating those kids into this dangerous leftist mindset. The eagle-eyed.
No, this is where you take a step too far. I think what he's saying is that this will introduce some weird ideas in their head and be confusing, and definitely taking children to this film might be a little bad, but it is rated PG-13. So if people want to take kids under 13, that's the parents' responsibility. Okay. Informed parenting. And you know what? I can't argue with erring on the side of safety as critical drinker sort of advocated for. I don't necessarily like it because it sort of seems like the boycott mentality, but it's not quite there. But it does fall into, I can see why people would think that's what he's hinting out here. Okay. But still, not saying it will change anyone. He, unlike, certain people on the left, he doesn't think probably movies brainwash people as much as your little Clockwork Orange graphic implies that he thinks he does. Yes, misreading, but you're misreading how effective. He's offended by the messaging that he's reading into the film. Does he think that people are going to be indoctrinated by it? No, that's sort of the narrative that you put in with your sort of not Orange Man bad, Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida. How dare he sort of be lax about the COVID mandates? Such a fascist, by giving people more freedom.
Or rabbit-eared, I guess, among you might recognize how similar this sounds to that groomer narrative that's been doing the rounds over.
And now he really sort of hypes it in. And I even have to give him some credit. I wouldn't actually say this, and I do have a feeling about it, that it does have that taste of it. But I don't think that's what Critical Drinker really was implying with this. Extremely. To be fair, I can understand why Pog here, with his simple worldview and very biased, uncritical thinking of actual criticism, might come to this conclusion, but I disagree. Okay, I'm hoping he's misunderstanding and not just inventing this just for his political messaging, but I'm not going to rule anything out.
There in normal country for a while now. And to the related strands of anti-woke nay cultural Marxism theories, the Drinkers podcast buddies like the band The About.
Yeah, you fucking fluffing about cultural Marxism, and sort of hiding the ball with that. Something I don't agree with. Yeah, some dumbass rightoids, and even some right wingers, even liberals like James Lindsay, I think goes a little bit too far with it. But again, sometimes erring on the side of safety can be a good thing. I wouldn't do it personally. I would preface it, be like this if I really wanted to make it a serious point. But Critical Drinker is a character. Maybe he thought this is how his character would approach this. Maybe. I'm not going to make any assumptions like certain people out there here. If it became a pattern with Critical Drinker, okay, fair enough. I've seen him enough to know he's fairly balanced. I'm probably one of the most balanced, but least detailed, more entertainment focused critics out there, along up there with a more left person like Ben Yahtzee Croshaw. But still, there's sort of a weird gray area there.
But hey, let's be generous and allow for the possibility that this similarity is accidental, that this alt-right substrate is a result of oversight on the Drinker's part instead of malice or fervor.
Okay. Thank you. Fair enough. Give him benefit of the doubt. Not going too far. You bring it out there. I mean, there is a certain snidiness to this sort of saying, let's give benefit of the doubt here. So I'll give you a benefit of the doubt. You're just not trying to be a Weasley little person. Not the B word that I was thinking of saying just before. Just being a little bit dodgy Weasley here with this snidey.
Either way, the video ends with a recommitment to Barbie as wokeness narrative fodder, and to the idea that it's succeeding because the film's advertising campaign lied. That's interesting. For a while now, as more and more people have caught onto the reactionary grift, the Barbie question has loomed.
Okay, who called on to the reactionary grift and who's the reactionaries? Please elaborate. Sometimes details actually matter. But I guess it doesn't matter either. None of this matters. Your words, what you're saying, how you're framing people, it doesn't matter. Just doesn't matter.
We've known for a while that the film would be a financial success, so the difficulty it posed to your chuds and your grifters, the get woke, go broke crowd, was clear. Wokeness in this sense is an intentionally vague and malleable label, as I've discussed in previous videos.
No, you people and the widespread use of wokeness has diluted the meaning of it, people's lack of understanding on both sides. But woke did have a meaning. It originally came from the left. The leftist version is going woke to sort of wake up from the status quo and how everything's a problem, everything's sexist, and you need to look for it. And the awakening, maybe I should phrase to that, the awakening is a false narrative that was pushed by people on the left, and the right turned it into clickbait. Not their fault. You made it into a joke with your media, and you generally have made it into a joke, even if you want to play hide the ball with sort of the mean, because yes, idiots, and sorry, not just idiots using the term woke, like Synthetic Man calling everything woke, and a lot of other rightoids just calling every little thing woke, sort of giving ammo to the dumbass people who are liking the woke and want to disrupt the anti-woke narrative isn't great. And there's some out of context clips of people stumbling about the definition of woke, like the person who wrote a book on it. People jumped all over her for not being good at public speaking, basically, and being flustered on a television program. Is she media trained at all? Is she even practiced? Do we know? Does she have a YouTube channel? No. You assume that she's just making this shit up or doesn't know what it means because she got flustered. And that's a little bit of a bitch. And why Pillar of Garbage here does not necessarily do that. He's still adding to the confusion that woke is vague and meaningless, has a meaning to different meanings to different people. And a lot of people are accepting the fact that because a lot of people are co-opting it who really just label everything with it, it's losing its value in sort of the culture war. But some of us will move on and some of us will keep using it as a general shorthand.
Videos, but there's really no workable formulation of it that wouldn't include the Barbie film. How, then, is that sacred mantra to be preserved? How can Barbie's runaway success be anything but an open refutation of get?
Come on, leftists can't be reactionary on conservative stuff. That's impossible. You know, a long time ago when President Sunday, you might not know about him, but people know about President Sunday when he was just starting out. He was sort of anti-Bosch. I had a discussion with him in the comments section where I consider Bosch leftist reactionary, and I do believe that. He just is a contradictory. He's just a contrarian. Everything right is just automatically bad, fascist, blah blah blah. That sounds extremely reactionary. And there are probably worse people out there, leftists, who are reactionary. Whole bunch of names that are even more unknown than Bosch, like Demon Mama, Bad Bunny, freaking idiots who just really give the left a bad name. And even I wouldn't consider them sensible leftists. Not that I consider too many leftists, not that I consider too many rightoids or rightists extremely sensible. Whenever you go to the far edges, I think you lose the plot and can't see anything straight.
Woke go broke. The drinker, knowingly or not, though I suspect knowingly, has furnished this movement with an answer. Barbie tricked the world. People were lured to...
Yeah, totally missed this. Everyone's a grifter but you. Yeah, that does seem to be the narrative for, well, mainly the left. But right sometimes alludes to it a little bit better.
See it under false pretenses. It doesn't count as a counterexample because the trailers lied.
Oh,
As
God.
we've seen, that isn't really true. But when has truth ever got in the way of this lot before? The Drinker's Barbie video then might be more than a loose collection of inaccurate jabs. It might...
No, it's I've said it plenty of times before. It's inaccurate reading, and that creates a rather unbalanced criticism, probably even unfair criticism and bad criticism of Barbie as a movie. I don't know if he's going to reconsider this. Sometimes you get the critical drinker. Maybe he won't. It's really not something he should focus on too much. Not something too concerned. And optics is a weird game to play. Just like people defending Az's ass steak.
might be an effective employment of dishonesty, a carefully calculated, almost plausible...
Oh, God. Dishonesty. So you hype up critical drinker saying Yes, most time he seems to have a good understanding of most media, but you're not considering he might have a huge blind spot and Barbie might fall into it. That is the more fair, that is the more good faith interpretation and a believable one because the sort of roots of this won't be found in based on the fact that I critiqued at least one of his freaking novels. You really want to get into understanding the perspective of the author of media pieces like The Critical Drinker. Going through his books would be very helpful and a very honest way of sort of gauging what he values in storytelling. But no, that's you couldn't read a Critical Drinker's novel. It's just crap. There's nothing of any value into it, I'm sure, if he did a review of it. So you're not interested in really getting down to the nitty gritty, it seems like, or else you would do a review and try to understand Critical Drinker critically before you started selectively taking some of his, in my opinion, bad takes and assuming he's misrepresenting and being a liar about it.
Plausible justification for the continuation of that anti-woke grift his fans so rapidly claim he's not a part of. To be clear, though,
He liked Prey. Critical Drinker liked Prey. Surprised some people. But yeah, he doesn't just blindly go with the narrative. He judges it for himself. And this is one thing I respect about the Critical Drinker. He just doesn't blindly. And even if his points are a little bit vague in the question form, you know, questioning about all these things, it is an effective tool for rhetoric to do that certain times. So I can understand that methodology. And sometimes it will make you come off as nitpicky and pedantic. But sometimes it's also a way to just ask questions and be like, get to a certain point and be like, okay, all of this stuff doesn't work for me. I don't think this is good storytelling because of my perspective. He doesn't say some of this stuff that would qualify this as his opinion. He's not one of these objective critics who really harps on, despite his association with EFAP. Even EFAP doesn't strictly adhere to the only objective points are a matter. It's just a misrepresentation of EFAP and even a misrepresentation of Critical Drinkers' association with any of the groups, but guilt by association is a thing.
I am not stating that this is the case. It is a possibility, sure, but there is another one. And that's that the drinker isn't pushing these narratives intentionally, isn't pursuing an inaccurate framing of
Yeah, nah, Critical Drinker was not fully calm and collected for the Barbie film. I think that's very apparent. I agree. It's definitely a outlier for the Critical Drinker. Now, if he had more of those sort of hot takes, but given what I think about Barbie and where the roots come from and my personal but rather educated opinion about art, literature, film, which probably outweighs Critical Drinker in a couple of areas. I'm more of a jack of all trades, not a specialist. Critical Drinker probably knows certain things much better than me, but I would like to take I have a wider scope, but less deep. It suits me well enough, but makes me a little tough. Makes it a little tough to really get into the gritty detail, but I can always research. Good thing about having a wide net of knowledge, but not very detailed, is with that wide net of knowledge, you can go deeper. You can research, especially in the internet age, down to the more finer detail when you have particular cases that you want to talk about in particular. Like absurd theater of the absurd definitely has a hint of that in Barbie. I'm familiar enough with it. Wasn't acted in one scene from one play for acting thing, but I got the feel for it. So when I looked into the theater of absurd, Barbie definitely had a lot of signs of coming from that thought. And that would align with the sort of indie auteur method of the writer and director of Barbie.
The film in order to help the reactionary anti-woke grift continue, and isn't trying to couch his inaccurate review in this sort of Mott and Bailey structure where flaws and poor criticism don't matter because woke film bad anyway. The other possibility is that he's not ideologically committed to any of this, and is simply exploiting it. Exploiting an audience that doesn't care if your review's built on lies, misrepresentations, and nonsensical nitpicks, so long as it's targeting a in this sort of Mott and Bailey structure, of that anti-woke grift his fans.
Okay. I must have went off on a rant too far. That's fine. Go back a little bit.
It under false pretenses. It doesn't count as a counterexample because the trailers lied. As we've seen, that isn't really true. But when has truth ever got in the way of this?
When's truth ever got in the way? Just his rhetoric is rather insidious. Much more insidious than the marketing of Barbie, I must say. I mean, this, you can take it as Critical Drinker did, or just sort of a weird representation mixed with a Space Odyssey reference, which probably makes it a little bit weird. It probably doesn't sync up completely, and I've admitted myself probably would be off-putting to a lot of more traditionally minded people. But you know what? Traditionally minded people probably are just all racist and bigots as far as people like Pog. I'm not going to say him in particular, but probably. I think that's being fair, though.
This lot before. The Drinker's Barbie video.
If you give me some generosity with some vagueness with that term.
But there might be more than a loose collection of inaccurate jabs. It might be an effective employment of dishonesty, a carefully calculated, almost plausible justification for the continuation of that anti-woke grift his fans so rapidly claim he's not a part of.
No, he has a part of. I wouldn't even consider myself a fan. Considering yourself a fan sort of puts you in a mind space where you're willing to defend someone. I respect him personally as a critic from everything I've seen from it. As a fan, no, I don't want to ever take that step. And he does sort of play off the sort of a anti-woke people. But frankly, I can understand why. As I said, I have a broader scale, and wokeness in sci-fi novels, hell, even in some fantasy, is downright frustrating sometimes on a couple of different levels. It's infuriating how far it's actually infiltrated into media. But you know what? Everyone's focused on these big titles, and no one does something like, criticize ancillary of justice, where they freaking go off on the gender binary, create a confusing narrative along with the sort of confusion about what gender is. I'm surprised there isn't someone, but the novels aren't really a big thing. And even though it won awards and it's invested, there was one person, but get off topic. Let me do this so I can finish up.
To be clear, though, I am not stating that this is the case. It is a possibility, sure, but there is another one. And that's that the Drinker isn't pushing these narratives intentionally, isn't pursuing an inaccurate framing of the film in order to help the reactionary anti-woke grift continue, and isn't trying to couch his inaccurate review in this sort of Mott and Bailey structure where flaws and poor criticism don't matter because woke film bad anyway.
Struck me about this film. A lot of parents
formulaic thriller novels and
God, keep on doing that.
Possibility is that he's not ideologically committed to any of this and is simply exploiting it. Exploiting an audience that doesn't care if your review's built on lies,
They're not lies. You see, you using this one example, which I agree that Critical Drinker misread. But I'm pretty sure I'm not going to, because you had enough examples from the Turf video. I even went into it and left a comment. I'll probably end this video with my comment to TurfNation, just to sum up my thoughts without going into this whole live stream thing. A cap off, so to speak. But yeah.
Representations and nonsensical nitpicks, so long as it's targeting a woke product. And that he's doing this either out of laziness or because he's not a good enough critic to do his job any other way.
Or neither are you, because you really don't get into the nitty gritty and really understand the film well enough to understand why someone like the Critical Drinker could have such this confusing about a media property about Barbie. Frankly, I don't think he's trying to be bad faith, but it's, as Andrew Clark would say, the results are the same as bad faith. His misreading, capitalizing on something most people would agree that Critical Drinker totally misread. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe some people agree with him. Probably too many people agree with him, but I can understand why, with all the so-called woke, more poor, lazy writing, probably caused by nepotism and favoritism in Hollywood, covering up that bad quality of writing with, woke elements so they can always use the racism. You're racist, biggest, sexist if you don't like this. That definitely is something that does happen. And generally, I'm not going to say Bog here does it, but I think he does do it. Ryan Johnson is like a symbol for these guys, even though his writing is like anti-traditional writing that employs some of the sketchiest logic to sort of glue together his films. Yeah, beautifully shot, executed rather well in a seamless fashion, good pacing, blah, blah, blah. Writing wise, if you want to logically make sense of it, there is way too many holes in his writing to actually do that.
Turning out formulaic thriller novels and clickable little morsels of hate is one thing, but actually engaging with art is another. So his Barbie video.
Yeah, when did you actually engage in the art? You engage with the political messaging, not about the artistic methodology of Barbie. I can do that without even bring up the political. Well, it's still tough with the feminism being such a present thing. But I can talk purely about the artistic, the mirroring that I see within scenes, the sort of traditions and homages and satirization of turning a doll, basically a corporate product, into an actual movie with character and humor to it, in not a traditional way that we don't see. Okay. If this was done all the time, I don't even know what to say. This isn't done all the time. This is an anomaly. Barbie is an anomaly. Why it's interesting to talk about.
Video isn't interesting because it's full of porkies, or because it sometimes plays like he fell asleep in the theater. It's interesting because it lays out pretty clearly the dilemma at the heart of the Critical Drinker channel. Is he just a churd on the anti-woke grift that's been able to maintain a kind of plausible deniability in the way of, say, Geeks and Gamers hasn't? Or is he just a hack, unable or unwilling to produce well-written videos whose
Oh, it's just those two options. He's either a grifter or he sucks at his job. Or maybe he has a different perspective that will throw him the fuck off and doesn't have the artistic backing, which you don't even seem to have yourself, to sort of analyze this movie for its actual artistic value. So stop judging Critical Drinker and just using, fair enough questions, but you're not leaving that nuanced question. It's just a binary. Is he a political grifter or just an idiot? There's also the fact that this is just a miss for him. Maybe it's not even a miss. Maybe it's a miss for us. Okay, everyone who thinks Barbie isn't this woke film. Maybe it's just so worked, so well executed by this indie artist who really has no experience in Hollywood, just so infiltrated. That's always a possibility, but I have extreme doubts from everything I know about it.
found a strategy that requires neither. What's the answer? Well, here's mine. Does it matter? Does it change anything?
Oh, God. Does it matter? It matters. You're only going off those two binaries. You didn't go with the third option, that this is just a misreading by him, an anomaly. Okay. Does that matter?
Anything? Either way, a Get Woke Go Broke Barbie exemption has been furnished. Either way, the criticism on display here is largely dribble. And either way, we're probably all better off not watching. Oh, and just for old time's sake,
They were so filled with rage and hatred and bitterness that it just had to come spewing out onto the screen.
are all
Oh.
very much appreciated. If you'd like to help support me more
Okay,
directly, Patreon
never
pledges at
mind.
any level are a
He's just plugging himself. I should play the plug. His Patreon, his channel, blah, 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 in credit stuff. I'm not that nice. I've been spending over 2 hours doing this. Okay. Okay, I didn't comment here. It's this one where I commented and got a reply.
Lowe's knows pros deserve the best.
I don't like you, Lowe's. I don't even care about you. I want to go down to the comment section. Okay, we get into the nitty gritty. Yeah, hard to agree. Hard to agree. It's getting late enough that I'm not even seeing the diss. Diss me if you want over that. Yeah, hard disagree. Critical Drinker is a writer about average given his latest book. He's probably below average in film studies. Probably self-taught, learned on the job with some education to back that up, but probably not a lot. But I could be wrong. However, I'm not. And even if I do agree that the critical drinker missed on that one scene that doubled up, the scene about that, sort of playing with the audience expectation, showing it one time without sort of seeing the background and then playing it again from other angles and just omitting her from one, you are tricking the audience. You're making it the first time they go around, they omitted her like she didn't exist. Second time around, that's sort of the unreliable narrator. Then you get into the unreliable narrator, then you get into the truth of the matter. It's sort of the superficial element it starts with and takes way too long with a lot of way too unnecessary scenes for, in my opinion, for Glass Onion, where I can't understand the purpose of some of the scenes, but it's a long movie, just dragged his ass and wanted to have some, I guess, quote unquote, funny, goofy scenes. That's my guess. He had time to waste with that. He just didn't understand filmmaking technique that was utilized here. I don't even know if that's the right word, filmmaking technique. Well, I said filmmaking technical that was utilized here. Should have been technique. My bad, utilized there. That being said, Pog didn't demonstrate any greater understanding of the film. Didn't demonstrate any greater understanding of filmmaking or the analysis in this section included in this video either. So, Pog's understanding of film or media analysis is what you're using to call dishonest film critic, then the premise of this video is fundamentally flawed. Yes, he does factor in the culture war a little bit too heavily for my taste, but that would make him more of an unbalanced and biased as a film critic than a dishonest one. Okay, so I got a reply. Then I replied, blah, blah, blah. I don't think Pog provided great film analysis here, just greater than The Critical Drinker, which wasn't hard because his review was so painfully bad. And given the evidence I found from his videos, I disagree with what you're saying. I think The Critical Drinker is dishonest in his videos. I think he edits. I hate this horrible editing. You assume that editing isn't just for the sake of time or because you don't realize a certain point. I don't think if he's talking about the editing Pog did with that, his methodology, I think I get into it. I think he edits certain ways to prove his point. Hell, I matches him up. Might as well add to that. Salt to the fire. Generally don't do it, but it's funny to do it. Just a one-up him here. Even if it's a self one-up. Well, I can understand why you say it's a painfully bad review. The Critical Drinker's Barbie review was much worse in my opinion, but to each his own. As for the dishonest part, if you're referring to things like the biggest lie in Pog's video, I still disagree I disagree reading of that example. He mentions that if the drinker didn't mute the audio of that scene to be dishonest, the mute sound is more a consequence. The mute sound is more of a consequence of the video making process. Yeah. Closing out after this. The mute sound is more of a consequence of video making process of the critical drinker rather than a choice he made for that moment in his video. Well, I have a read more also. I can be quite a typer, but not that much. If you want to say you don't agree with his video making process, you want to say you don't agree with his video making process because you think it can come across as misleading to the audience and might come across as dishonest at certain points in his videos because of that process, I can understand that perspective of TCD's videos much better than pretty much what he laid out. But he didn't comment back because I owned him. Not really. Okay, it was nice enough that he replied to me. Okay, especially if he knows about my association with certain people like this guy here, Tiamat. She only seemed to be having a heated debate or some sort of discussion, which is always good. Sorry, I'm not following along. Trying to wrap up here. And it seems quite right. Okay. Glad you guys are talking about Prey. Not something I really have a big opinion about. But you know what? I am a doomer. There's certain movies where I just opt out at a certain point. Oh, nice. Totally understands and loves Japanese cinema. That clip will forever be funny. Yeah, I think I've seen that clip. Him not being able to name something. His favorite modern Japanese movie are Old Boy. Yeah, Korean movie. Did he really say that? Okay. If he really said that, that would be worth making fun of him for. But yeah, okay. I'm done. Thanks for everyone who's coming. I wanted to see what a Monday night, later night slot would bring in. And so thank you, Tiamat and Daniel, for popping up. As I said, if I think I can edit this into a nice, concise little video, I will probably try doing it. Who knows? Who cares? Till next time, take care, and I'm done. Sure thing. Bye.